welcome to the Drawing Room Experts. This is Zaib, back with another podcast. Feel free to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, wherever you listen. I think we're on Facebook Podcast now, or like Samsung Podcast. Everyone has a podcast platform these days. It seems Podbean is where I host this podcast, so feel free to listen to that there. Would really appreciate if you could share your ratings as well, because it makes it easier for other people to discover the show. Welcome to the podcast, and the episode in this um, the discussion in this episode that I wanted to really have is something that's been on my mind for a while, and I haven't found time to really articulate it, not even in my head, but just been like articulating it every now and then, trying to make sense of what I'm trying to say, what I'm thinking. Because what happens is that I feel something first. I have an emotional reaction to that, and then I try to articulate it to find out as to why I had that reaction, if there's a certain principle or if there's a certain trigger that caused that particular reaction. So usi tarike se, I think uh, this discussion, I think, came into being. And of course, we're talking about, if you've not guessed from the title, that we're talking about political civility or civility in general, I think, in social settings. But इसका ज़्यादातर इतलाक and ज़्यादातर application, is on the political stage, because that's what we hear a lot about. बहुत सारे examples हैं इसके that I wanted to go through. But generally, how do I define civility? पहले तो, before I go and try and dissect what an argument I'm trying to put forward, I want to describe what I understand about it first, so that आपको पता लग जाए where I'm coming from. So when someone says there should be civil discourse and political civility, is a thing of the past nowadays. पुराने ज़माने में जैसे सिविल तरीके से डिबेट्स होती थी, आर्ग्यूमेंट्स रखे जाते थे, वो नहीं होता अब. आपकी जनरेशन थोड़ी सी हाइपर है. They use big words like, fascism, and you know uh, you're a lefty or righty or whatever. Like, there's a lot of hate that goes behind the discourse. तो उसके argument में लोग कहते हैं कि civility should be observed at all times. You're free to disagree with one another, but just be civil about it and all of that. On its description say, I don't think anyone would disagree. I'm not suggesting that should be the case. I completely agree with that in reality. But the thing is, sometimes good principles and good I mean, I'm looking for a better word, but principles, I think, is the best word. Sometimes good principles are very limiting. You know what I mean? उनकी एप्लीकेशन बहुत लिमिटेड होती है. और वो बहुत लिमिटेड तो नहीं है, मतलब वो लिमिट कर देता है हमारी थिंकिंग को. एंड आई गिव यू, लाइक, आई ट्राई टू अनवाइंड दिस आर्गुमेंट. व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से हियर इज कि व्हेन आई से पॉलिटिकल सिविलिटी और civility in discourse, that sometimes, limits your progress, in my opinion. Because what that inherent argument assumes is कि जो इस वक्त एग्जिस्ट करता है, जो status quo इस वक्त एग्जिस्ट करता है, for example, you and I are in an argument. ठीक है? We get in an argument, we have a disagreement on something. Now, on starts the debate. इस पे वो सिविलिटी का ठप्पा लगता है ना, कि यहाँ पर सिविलिटी होनी चाहिए, बिकॉज व्हेन देयर इज अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, वेयर देयर इज अ डिसएग्रीमेंट, यहाँ पर सिविलिटी होनी चाहिए. ठीक है? बट देयर इज एन इंटरेस्टिंग एंड वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट underlying factor that is assumed for it to be a civil discourse. वो assumption ये है कि status quo जिसके ऊपर हम बहस कर रहे हैं, वो um, is based on that status quo is based on civil principles. You know what I mean? जैसे कि if I'm a prisoner, ठीक है, if I'm a prisoner, or if I'm a slave, let's say back in the days, one might argue still you are to some extent with some systems around the world, but generally like physical slave, मैं real slaves की बात कर रहा हूँ जो slavery you, you know hundreds of years ago US में होती थी. So if I was that slave, if I was one of them, I am in disagreement with my quote unquote master or my captor. ठीक है? Because that person thinks that my position in society is that of a slave, जो कि मेरी actual position को demote करता है. And I obviously disagree with that when as a slave I may think, actually I deserve to be equal because of my skin color or my background, I'm being treated inappropriately. This is an argument. This is an argument between my captor and myself, a slave. इस आर्ग्यूमेंट में या इस डिसएग्रीमेंट में अगर सिविलिटी हो, तो वो एक ही बिना पे हो सकती है, assuming कि जो स्टेटस को है, आई द स्लेवरी कॉन्टेक्स्ट इज सिविल. इस इंस्टेंस के अंदर जो स्टेटस को है स्लेवरी इज नॉट सिविल. तो इन मैटर्स ऑफ moral, ethical conundrums, to expect two parties who lie at an opposite spectrum of such ethical and moral conundrums to stay civil, not from a factor कि एक दूसरे को कत्ल करें, but from a factor where they will raise their voices, where a slave, i.e., going back to the example, will try and fight the captor, will try and quote unquote kill the captor because they want to escape this situation that they find themselves in. इस सिचुएशन को एग्जिट करने के लिए फॉर वन पार्टी, for myself as a slave, there cannot be a civil discourse where I sit and reason with my captor. The fact that the person who's captured me, who's employed me, who's like enforced this ideology of you're a slave on me, they're not doing this because one fine morning they believe in that. They believe, and उसमें uh, philosophical arguments and factual arguments exist करते हैं कि when slavery was happening in the United States, there was religious texts that were used to justify it. There was social, scientific quote unquote facts that were used to justify it कि भाई we are the better race और ये हमारी race जो है ना थोड़ी advanced है, we're better thinkers and we're better like philosophers and we're conquerors and whatever. Henceforth, this other race which is not that needs to subjugate itself under us, subjugate itself to us. So that's the argument behind slavery. ठीक है? So I'm sorry, my glasses are glaring a little bit. But the thing is कि उस instance के अंदर there cannot be a civil discourse where one party stands up and starts debating कि slavery is bad and the other party starts debating that the slavery is good. I was just watching a video, and I'm kind of like in the rabbit hole of YouTube videos these days. When it comes to Neil deGrasse Tyson, Stephen Hawkins, um, uh, and ये क्या नाम है उसका यार? Yeah, I think Stephen Hawkins. I don't know, but the likes. You mean the scientists of this world, or quote unquote progressive and factual voices of this world. तो उसमें नील डिग्रास टाइसन की एक मैं वीडियो देख रहा था. उसमें he says to win a debate, to win an argument, um, what is required is that one party to be very charismatic and is able to they have their ways with the words clearly, something that I don't. Has great vocabulary, has a personality, all of that stuff. For them to win the quote unquote debate, the objective truth is irrelevant in that instance. So he suggests कि जहाँ पर when it comes to objective truths like Earth is flat versus Earth is round, he's not going to engage in a debate on such matters, or there shouldn't be a debate on such matters, because one thing is an objective truth, the other thing is not. So when two things which are opposite to one another in terms of objective truth and objective falsehood, when they quote unquote come in forward in front in the form of a debate, there's an opportunity, there's a possibility that the objective falsehood wins because the rules of the debates are such कि उसमें charisma and ways with words and arguments putting ये सब चीजें करना, that matters more than the fact itself. you know so he says that कि in matters पे, God fucking hell, there's a fucking truck. Anyway, ignore that. सुनो मेरी बात, समझने की कोशिश करो, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात हो रही है. उन मैटर्स में डिबेट नहीं होनी चाहिए बिकॉज नो इट सर्व्स नो वन एनी पर्पस. ठीक है. सिमिलरली व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से हियर इज कि जिन मैटर्स के अंदर जैसे कि स्लेवरी की हमने बात करी, स्लेवरी इज अ मैटर ऑफ ethical and moral right and absolute right and absolute wrong, right? तो उन मैटर्स में डिबेट नहीं हो सकती बिकॉज उसमें सिविलिटी की कोई गुंजाइश नहीं है. If one party is a Nazi and the other party is a Jews, Nazis are saying you should be murdered and you should have no right to live on the planet. The other part, there can't be debate when it comes to the other party saying no, we have a right. There's no debate in that matter. Yes, the other party has every right to live and exist in the world freely as any human being. So on matters of moral and ethical conundrums, जब डिबेट्स एग्जिस्ट नहीं कर सकती तो सिविलिटी का तो कोई सवाल ही पैदा नहीं होता. मेरा मेरा ओपिनियन है. दैट्स व्हाई आई थिंक there's a fundamental problem when people come and throw these words like there should be political discourse and like civility in political discourse, civil रहना चाहिए, आराम से बात करो. Are you fucking out of your mind? In matters of slavery and Holocaust or discrimination, you cannot expect civility because civility is the opposite of what the discourse is trying to achieve. Now again, I'm not saying that in such matters one should go straight to violence. देखो violence में और lack of civility में थोड़ा फर्क है. There are shades and I would say um, levels to that. ऐसा नहीं है कि बस इसके बाद या तो आप सिविल हो या फिर डायरेक्ट आप खून खराबा है. तो थोड़ा सा इंसान सोचे कि देयर आर लेवल्स टू एवरीथिंग. ठीक है. उस हद तक पहुंचने में बहुत टाइम है. अभी अभी हम बहुत शुरू में, राइट आफ्टर सिविलिटी. उसके बाद के जो बहुत सारे 5 6 7 8 फेजेस हैं व्हाटएवर, दे आर स्टिल यू नो कंपैरेटिवली अगर सिविलिटी से कंपेयर करें तो उसको वायलेंस दिखेगा. एग्जाम्पल, कल को if something goes wrong, for example if there's a matter of discrimination against your community, जो भी community आपकी, right, whatever community you're part of, that community comes under scrutiny in terms of there's discriminatory laws or anything. What is your first thing that comes to your mind as a counter action? Is protests, right? Which apparently दुनिया के कानून हमें बताते हैं, every rule book in the world says that protest is a right of every human being in democratic societies. When these protests come out, तो जब चीज़ें बाहर आती हैं, one of the biggest arguments the other party which is on the other end says कि नहीं यार, we shouldn't like streets पे नहीं आना चाहिए, ये नहीं करना चाहिए, it's very impolite, it's very uncivil, इसमें मारा धाड़ी होती है, नारेबाजी होती है, whatever, जो भी, like it's not a very nice thing to see. These guys should basically do other things, don't protest. तो उनके लिए तो the fact that someone's standing out in groups outside is also considered quote unquote violent or like a departure from the civil discourse, right? तो अभी हम उस एक्सट्रीमिटी पे नहीं जा रहे कि वायलेंस की तरफ हम जाए, हम उससे बहुत पहले हैं इस वक्त. तो आई फील, अभी पता नहीं मैंने क्या क्या बोला है. आई डोंट नो इफ एनीवन, इफ यू विल बी एबल टू capture what I said, but let me try and really tie it together ताकि तुम लोग समझ सको मैं क्या कहना चाह रहा हूँ. The argument what I'm trying to put forward is political civility, yes, civility in public discourse and public debates is, I think, a roadblock in trying to achieve social justice. ब्रॉडली अगर मैं बात करूँ उसमें, सोशल जस्टिस के अंदर इनकम इनक्वालिटी भी आ जाती है, राइट्स भी आ जाते हैं, different types of discrimination, anti-discrimination policies भी आ जाती हैं. Everything that is against social justice, it cannot occur purely through civil discourse. It cannot. It has never. There's no precedent in history where that has occurred. In the United States alone, there had to be a movement, civil rights movement in the 60s and the 50s. There had to be riots, literally. People had to die for this. Back in India and Pakistan, subcontinent ke andar, there's no movement that has achieved anything just with civil discourse when it comes to social justice matters. ठीक है आप in Pakistan, for example, there's a huge debate around forced disappearances कि जिसमें लोगों को उठा लेती है agencies allegedly. um, People come out and protest that. They don't go on fucking TV channels and try and debate that out, because no one's going to debate for it, because it's such a stupid argument to make otherwise, right? Okay, there should be, what are you trying to say, there should be forced disappearances? No. So what I'm trying to say here is that fucking asshole, I'm sorry, it's just so noisy outside, but I need to make this point. Case in the matters of social justice, civility is the enemy, in my opinion, because there's no way to achieve the goal that you're setting yourself to achieve. इसमें क्लासिक जो जिस बेसिस पे ऊपर मैं ये आर्गुमेंट रख रहा हूँ is when people talk about the fact कि in the United States कि uh, Bernie Sanders, he's a grumpy old man. He just like he's fighting all the time. Blah 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 blah. He's just like he's so hard on my nerves, man. Dude, can you just calm down and be a little bit like Joe Biden and try and find unity and all of that stuff? Do you even know what the guy is talking about? The guy is talking about voting rights. The guy is talking about income equality. Okay? The guy is talking about in recent cases just when there is massive flight cancellations. People are getting stuck at the airports. They're getting their flights delayed or canceled last minute after they've paid for it. There's no repercussions for these airline businesses for doing that willy-nilly. What he's suggesting is that every flight that is canceled on the tarmac, per passenger, the airline should be paying like 55K penalty or something like that. He's coming in with this force, and then other people are like, यार come on, यार, relax, dude, calm down, calm down. तो क्या जो इंसान वहाँ खड़ा हुआ है एयरपोर्ट पे उसकी कोई वैल्यू नहीं है? People who are getting stranded on airports, who just having their flights cancelled, missing their plans or whatever, they're paying for it. They're not fucking standing there for free food. What happens to them? So this guy this is legitimate civil rights. This is legitimate human rights issue. जिसमें आपके rights को corporation, you know, subdues it because they don't have another plan, because they have no accountability even when they were bailed out when COVID began by billions of dollars. And then they end up doing buybacks, and then they end up giving their executives great bonuses, still making sure that people were laid off when they were specifically asked not to do that. तो कोई उनकी accountability नहीं है. When a person like Bernie Sanders comes forwards and says okay, that shouldn't be the case. He's looked at some sort of grumpy old man, there should be political civility, आराम से बात करो, चिल्लाओ मत. What the fuck are you talking about? These are not matters to sit quiet and be polite about. There's a time and place for everything, even civility. Again, there are layers there. ठीक है, लेयर्स हैं, लेवल्स हैं, वायलेंस तक कोई बात नहीं जा रही वहां पर अभी तक. डोंट fucking confuse everything. अच्छा, तो you're saying they should be violent? Are you? No. Okay, this is just, don't be such a, you know, bonehead. um Another matter that comes to mind ke, um Black Lives Matter. Few years ago, I did a podcast on this as well, when they were like, "Oh, you know, there shouldn't be these protests. ये तो उससे क्या हो रहा है? Like, से क्या? What's the purpose?" So there shouldn't be protests at all for like people dying. There's no precedent, as I mentioned, in human history कि जिसमें human rights और social justice की जब बात आई है, that has been achieved through quote unquote civil means. जिसको आप समझते हैं सिविल मीन्स क्या कि बैठे बैठे सूट पहन के बात करो. So you can see how I started. Now I'm kind of riled up because I really feel strongly about these things. Um, so there is no way that civil, um, discourse could exist in matters of civil justice or social justice, as I just mentioned. Another instance, Imran Khan, Pakistan में पे बहुत बात होती है कि Imran Khan and his party has introduced a lot of you know, uncivil behavior in public spheres, and that has really rotted the fabric of our society. And people are like at each other's faces and calling each other names and abusing one another on TV shows. That's because of Imran Khan. Really, that's that's because of Imran. Okay, okay. Massive issues with Imran Khan as a politician. I've recorded podcasts on that. I'm well on record. So मेरे पर कोई, you know. But when it comes to corruption, when it comes to matters where the elite class, the ruling class, that includes, institutions, go with, without any implication, without any accountability, जिसमें direct human rights का and at the same time, country is in shithole. A lot of that has to do with ABC institutions. तो उन matters के ऊपर जब आपको खून खौलता है, that's the right thing to do. You should be offended by that, not by the reaction, even if you hate it. I mean, I don't appreciate some of the things that are said on TV shows and by some of the people that are employed by Imran Khan, but that causes me less offense compared to what the actual root cause of the problem is, which is corruption and eh, lack of accountability, blah blah blah, human rights issues. That causes me more offense. ये भी problem है क्योंकि the reason why people get worked up के civility और ये because they feel offended when someone comes on TV and says a bad word or कोई abusing शुरू कर देता है. They feel offended by that, and okay, you should be. It's not a good thing. But when it comes to offense, there has to be some level here, some layers here. कि either you're offended or you're not. कोई ना कोई तो levels होते हैं, layers होते हैं ना offense के भी. So you're offended with that, by that more compared to a fucking criminal uh, um, assigned as a minister of state. Go figure. तो कोई बैलेंस होता है चीज का, कोई एक समझ में आती है बात. तो like I said, civility in matters of social justice is ridiculous. ये कोई argument exist नहीं करना चाहिए, in my opinion. um I think I've think I've gone on, and I don't know how much sense I've made in this particular episode, but it's a point that I wanted to share with you guys. I don't see and treat this as a point where it is like very apt and eloquent. No way. It's a matter that I feel very strongly about, as I mentioned. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Facebook, like the page and Instagram. We're on all audio platforms and Spotify and Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Samsung Podcast, Audible, and Podbean. Don't forget to rate the show as well. That helps other people to discover it as well. We'll see you back with another one where I can rent um, some more. And yeah, take care. Bye.